Getting our first look, busy day for you, first look at the economic data, which is reflecting what's been going on with the COVID-19 pandemic in China. Finbar, start with you. How bad is it?
It's pretty bad, Joe. Most of the numbers that came out this morning indicated record lows in China. We had industrial production, which is a measurement of manufacturing and mining, really China's famous manufacturing economy. And it was in negative territory for January and February for the first time. Now, this is because all of the factories in China, most of the factories were closed down for a prolonged period. Some of them remain shut. So basically these factories have had to grind to a halt, and they're slowly trying to get their production back up and running again. We also saw a complete collapse in retail, which is again not very surprising considering large swathes of China has been on lockdown. People have not been able to go to the shops. They haven't been able to do their shopping, and they've been buying predominantly online. That's been reflected in the fact that retail sales fell by 20%, 20.4% in the first 2 months of the year. We also had fixed asset investment, which fell by 24.5%. Again, this shows that businesses have not been able to invest in equipment, in property. And I guess what you're seeing overall there is an absolutely devastating picture for the Chinese economy in the first 2 months of the year. This is combined data for January, February. We'll wait and see whether it gets back to normal in March. Probably not, but it's pretty bad.
Now, John, I wanted to ask you, China seems to be getting a handle on the health crisis itself, but of course the rest of the world is just now starting to deal with the coronavirus. What does that mean for China?
Well, first, for China, they are starting to get a handle on the virus, but they're still in the process of getting their economy back online. Remember that the Wuhan lockdown started January 23, almost 2 months ago. And so they're still getting their industry online. Many shops have not reopened, and this will take more time, probably into April at least. And that is what we can expect from the rest of the world. In Europe, Italy, as we know, is on lockdown, but Spain just went on lockdown. Germany just closed its borders. And so Europe is just starting the very strict steps that China took 2 months ago. So what's the economy in Europe going to look like 2 months from now? The US is even farther behind. New York City just banned eating out yesterday, and they've closed the schools. But most of America has not started to take the drastic steps that people think are necessary to control the virus. So it may be even longer than 2 months before we know what's going on in the US.
Finbar, I realize these are kind of an initial look at this, but compared to looking at the historical background of what we've been dealing with our economies around the world, how unprecedented is this?
I mean, it's absolutely unprecedented. This has never happened before. And, from covering supply chain and trade over the past couple of months, when you speak to people who run businesses and factories in China, they've said, well, we don't really know what we're doing because we're dealing with the unknown. Speaking to economists about data that's coming out, they're really struggling to update their models in time with the news headlines. The pace of which this is unfolding is really unprecedented. So while people are saying this is better or worse than the global financial crisis, this is, it's comparable with a sort of wartime lockdown in the global economy. These are all valid points, but it's really worth remembering that nobody actually can predict with any clarity what will happen here. As John has just said, it's a moving picture. The US is just going into various states of lockdown at the moment, so we really do not know where this will end up.
John, a little bit more about the employment figures that have come out. I mean, of course, this all happened right around the time of the Lunar New Year. China, of course, being famous as the largest human migration in the world, and that's primarily these migrant workers from cities. What are these numbers reflecting about that?
Well, the surveyed unemployment rate, which is what Western economies do, is they do a survey to see what the unemployment rate is. And in China, you can only survey people who have fixed jobs or in offices for the most part. And so that went up a full percentage point from 5.2 to 6.2, which is a big jump for China, where that unemployment rate had been relatively steady around just above 5% for months and months and months. So there's a big jump, but that does not include most migrant workers because they can't be surveyed. And migrant workers are being hit hardest because of the travel bans, because of the closing of the factories, closing of the shops. And so they aren't counted. So the real unemployment rate may be much larger. And another point I'd like to make about factories returning to work in China is just, yes, they are coming back online, but one of the big new challenges they're going to face is lack of demand from the West. No new orders from Europe or the United States, which may mean there'd be a second round economic effect on them.
And for both of you, of course, everybody's asking a question about, is this a low point? Have we hit a low point here or not?
Well, I think that the Chinese government would certainly hope so. At the press conference in Beijing today, those were the sorts of noises that they were making. I think what John said there is really important. The second wave economic impact is a global economy. This is not a zero-sum game. You know, it's not like China recovers and it's back on track. It's reliant on demand from the rest of the world. Also, on the factories reopening, only 60% of businesses in China as of last Friday, according to the Ministry of Industry, were reopened. I mean, that's just over half of all the businesses in China were reopened. So there's 40% still closed. I mean, that's massive. Like, if you think about the size of China's economy and how many businesses that means are still shut. So, you know, you would maybe think that it has hit its bottom and is on the way up, but I mean, the numbers are still astronomical. It's really hard to make any concrete observations.
All right, John Finbar, thank you for your reporting and to the entire team, and we look forward to